Well, as I understand it today, you've already heard from a couple of different speakers about the relationship between groundwater pumping and subsidence, so that's what I'm going to talk about. I guess I wanted to start my talk by saying that I'm a resource manager, so I am a consumer of your information, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we make use of the information that folks like you collect as we apply it to trying to manage the different objectives that the legislature gives us for these resources. So this just will help orient you as, you know, this is Virginia. Let me see, where's my pointer? Okay. So we got Chesapeake Bay here, we got the James River, the York River, Rappahannock, Potomac. This area in green is the area of the coastal plain aquifer system. And so we have separate management areas that regulate the withdrawal of groundwater in the Eastern Virginia Groundwater Management Area, which is the green area here. And then we have a separate management area here for the Eastern Shore. For both of those management areas, we have developed our own groundwater flow models that the USGS has initially built for us, and then we maintain them over time. So that's kind of the area that we're operating in. And some of you may be aware, and I don't know if this has come up in any other talks, but we have a significant geological control structure here, the Chesapeake Bay Impact Crater, that does have some role in how the system functions and how we manage it. So next, this is our hydrogeologic framework. Any of the geologists in the room have seen these kinds of things before. This is our conceptual cross-section of that coastal aquifer system that you saw in green there in the plan view. You know, this is a system, as you can see here, of you know, multiple aquifers and confining layers. And the other thing I would point out here is that you know, there are varying degrees of confinement throughout this system. So these aquifers communicate with each other. Water flows between some of these units in different areas spatially based on the pumping gradients that are established in these various aquifers. One of the things I'm going to talk about as we go a little bit further, the homecoming king or queen of our aquifer system is the Potomac aquifer right here. This is the most popular aquifer. About 90% of all the groundwater withdrawals in the coastal aquifer system come from that particular aquifer. The primary reason is it's highly productive and it has an extremely high water quality, so everybody wants to use that. Now, as you might guess, since everyone wants to use that, that presents its own set of challenges. This here helps you understand what some of those challenges are. Here, these are the amounts of water withdrawn from all those other aquifers, right? The red line here is the withdrawal from the Potomac aquifer. As you can see, we had a significant boom in the post-war era in terms of growth in water use as industry and residential development spiked in Virginia. And our regulatory program came into effect right here at the peak when we started to see impacts in declining water levels and concerns about other associated impacts. So that's when we started managing, and I just wanted to point out here that obviously as the groundwater withdrawal increases, the water levels decrease, and therefore the associated land subsidence. So as you can see, once our program started right about here, the initial program that we had was primarily just documenting everybody's historic withdrawal and saying that's okay for the future, so let's permit you at what your yield of your well is, the maximum yield of your well. As you can see, it spiked up and continued to spike up. That didn't work, right? So the General Assembly stepped in and we changed the nature of the permit program so that now what we do is we base permits on its impact on the system and how that impact changes a specific water level in each aquifer that we're trying to shoot for to maintain within each aquifer. So ever since then, what we've really been doing with the program is chipping away at water rights that were established, 50 years or more ago, right? So imagine, if you will, trying to take that water back. It's a simple question. We've got too much water use, so let's take it back and fix it. But these people have lobbyists, these people have lawyers, so it's not quite as simple as it seems. So I just wanted to quickly put this up. I understand you've seen this slide before, but I think the reason we all are here and what we do, why we do what we do is watch these people here, right? So this is the aquifer, we pump it, and guess what? Our confining units contract, and there we have that increase, that horizontal impact from that land subsidence that you heard about earlier. So this here is some output from one of our groundwater flow models. What you can see here is some, whoops, I keep doing that, I'm sorry. What you can see here is some of the simulated water levels within the various aquifers from the model that we use. We've also activated the subsidence package within this particular groundwater flow model. As you know, we have 3 extensometers. Unfortunately, that's not a continuous record in terms of the data. So we had very little data to calibrate the sub-package with, but we went ahead and did it anyway with an eye toward the future. You've heard over the course of the day about a whole bunch of different efforts to collect data using GPS and other kinds of techniques. We're excited to look to the future to see how we might be able to use that data to calibrate this as well. But even with that limited data, we're able to show kind of the response to groundwater coming down, and then this is the simulated aquifer compaction. Okay, so there is a relationship, and you've seen this here. These areas of land subsidence correspond directly with our major pumping centers. So here, I wanted to point out one of the things about the Potomac Aquifer is that it's highly interbedded with clays, and at one point in time, depending on if you're a lumper or a splitter, if you're a splitter, at one point in time we looked at the Potomac Aquifer as 3 separate aquifers. Now we look at it more as a single regional unit. But one factor about that led the splitters to break it up is that you do have lots of clay interbedding within the system. And those clays are a primary component of the land subsidence in this unit based on some of the studies that the USGS has done for us. What you see here is that as you pump water out of these aquifers, the makeup water within those aquifer sediments is coming from those confining units and those interbedded clays. So what that does is, as the water comes out and the weight of all of these different units comes down on these, my understanding is that the clays themselves reverse their polarity and therefore can't rehydrate. And so largely what's lost from these clay units is what we call our inelastic land subsidence. And so for all intents and purposes, that's probably lost, and we probably will not be able to restore that. However, the compaction that occurs in the actual aquifer sediments themselves, in the coarser grain sediments, that can be recovered to some extent, and we've seen evidence of that in our extensometers. So again, just to kind of illustrate from our model data, the actual simulation impact of the elastic and inelastic components. What you see here is the green line represents total simulated compaction, and the red line is the compaction of the aquifer units, and that's the part that's recoverable. And then here we have the fine grain units, which is the inelastic component that's not. So again, you probably have seen this in some of our reports in terms of the rate of subsidence that you've seen here. Most of it, we believe, is due to the aquifer compaction. There's been some analysis of this, and the unlikely causes appear to be those listed here. Our primary management issues in our permit program is declining water levels, the reversal of gradient, and loss of storage through subsidence. Our permit program regulates any user that withdraws 300,000 gallons in a single month. We go through a very extensive geotechnical review and the collection of on-site data as we make these decisions, and we compare that to our model simulations. So I guess as kind of a take-home, what I wanted you to know is that we assume that by managing to this regulated water level, we're going to at least restore some of that elastic storage and minimize future loss in that inelastic storage. The challenge that we have, and I think that most managers have, is that most of the permits that we issue, we have approximately 350 groundwater permits. Most of them, the change in withdrawal in that particular permit results in an unmeasurable change in land subsidence or improvement, right? So that becomes particularly challenging. There may be a half a dozen of my withdrawals that I can point to that actually have a measurable improvement when we cut them back. And the other challenge is the time step in the permitting program is 15 years. Obviously, at millimeters a year, 15 years doesn't really represent that much time. Obviously, you guys were out at SWIFT the other day. We've been very involved in that effort. I don't know if anybody said so the other day, but the state has largely paid for those facilities in terms of the extensometer facility. Originally, HRSD fronted the cost, but we paid them back. The last thing is, I think all of us need to look at this as a long-term issue in the context of a permitting program. We're looking at the long term, and again, we're hoping that the data that you all create will help put this into our tool, and we can improve over time and become better managers over time.